There's no way that you could watch Michael Jordan and LeBron James and think that Michael Jordan is not the GOAT.
LeBron James has been shielded by the basketball world for so long that it feels weird when the narrative finally starts to shift. For years, if LeBron had a bad night, the conversation usually found a way to circle back to someone else. It was the coach, the roster, the front office, the schedule, or the matchups. They said he just needed more help. To be fair, there have been times when those excuses made sense, but now something very different is starting to happen. The excuses are getting louder and patience is wearing thin. Even the media, who used to protect LeBron, are starting to sound a lot more skeptical. That is exactly what makes this whole situation so fascinating. The latest criticism is not about LeBron missing a big shot or having a rough night scoring the ball. This goes way deeper than that. It is about defense. It is about effort. It is about his heart. It is about whether a 41-year-old LeBron James, who still gets praised for every highlight play, also deserves the same heat when he is clearly dragging on the other end of the floor. According to the source, that is exactly what people are questioning now. It is in your best interest to play all 82. Is that something you have thought about since setting that goal? I mean, that is a goal, but we will see. But that is not something I am discussing right now. The Lakers reportedly held a meeting with JJ Redick, LeBron, and Luka Doncic after a brutal stretch of bad defense. Redick, who has never been shy about holding players accountable, apparently wanted much more from his two stars on the defensive end. That alone tells you everything about the current situation. This isn't about whether LeBron can still score points. This isn't about whether he can still throw down a dunk or make a chase down block. Everybody already knows he can do that. The real issue is whether he is doing the hard work the Lakers need from him on a consistent basis. And that is where the criticism hits harder, because the source makes a very blunt and honest point. LeBron's biggest excuse now is age. He is 41. People ask, what do you expect? That is the shield used whenever his defense is mentioned. He's older. He's not the same athlete. You can't expect him to chase every possession like he is 28 again. On the surface, that sounds like a reasonable argument. It really does. But the problem is that LeBron is still being praised as if he has no age-related limitations when it comes to everything else. When he dunks, sprints in transition, or hits a chase down block with burst, everyone says he is unreal for his age. Everyone calls him the greatest 40-year-old ever. Everyone says his longevity proves he belongs in the GOAT conversation for the rest of time. So the question becomes very simple. If he's still great enough to be praised for the athletic moments, why is it unfair to criticize the defensive lapses? That is the core of the argument, and it is strong. It exposes the double standard that has followed LeBron for years. He gets the credit when the game looks beautiful. He gets all the legacy points when he does something historic. He gets all the flowers when he pulls off moves that make people shake their heads in pure admiration. But the moment the conversation turns toward defensive effort, the tone changes. Suddenly, it is all about his age. Suddenly, it is fatigue. Suddenly, it is impossible to ask him to do too much on the floor. Suddenly, everyone acts like defending is a massive burden that should be excused because of his high mileage. Listen, we made it this far. So, I was trying to see if I could make plays. Obviously, my presence on the floor is key for our ball club, but I thought the guys did an amazing job, especially in overtime. I thought Marcus was great in overtime. He hit the three away from their bench and really stepped up. I think Rui threw it over the top. He hit the three, got to the line, and made his free throws. That is exactly what the source is pushing back against. Honestly, it is hard to ignore the point being made here. Nobody is asking LeBron to be Gary Payton. Nobody is saying he needs to lock down the opponent's best player all night. No one is pretending he can cover the whole floor by himself or play like a young guard in his prime. But there is a massive difference between being limited and being disengaged. There is a difference between conserving energy and looking checked out. There is a difference between being older and choosing not to show effort. That distinction matters. The footage keeps coming back to the idea that LeBron's defensive issues are not purely physical. That is a huge part of the debate, because if he physically could not do it anymore, then the conversation would be different. We hear the usual talk about age curves, physical limits, and shifting roles. But the evidence clearly proves that LeBron can still deliver elite highlights whenever he truly wants to. He can still sprint back for a chase down block or explode for a massive dunk. He still moves with a sudden burst that defies his age, looking far younger than his birth certificate says he should. That suggests the issue isn't just his body failing him. The real problem is actually choice. And that is what makes this criticism feel so sharp. The argument here is that LeBron is deciding when to work and when to take plays off. He chooses when to sprint and when to coast, when to chase the ball, and when to stand around complaining to refs after a turnover while the Lakers play 4-on-5. That is the exact kind of thing fans always notice. Once people see it, those excuses get harder to sell. That meeting with JJ Redick is a massive part of this story. If the coach is calling in LeBron and Luka to demand defensive accountability, things have clearly reached a boiling point. It means these issues aren't just talking points for analysts on television anymore. This is a crisis the coaching staff is trying to fix behind closed doors. The fact that Redick had to tell LeBron, a 41-year-old superstar with one of the greatest careers in NBA history, to step it up on defense says everything. This is where the mood shifts from respect to pure frustration. And there is even more to it. Even after that meeting with Redick, the actual results on the court didn't really change. They beat the Kings but fell apart against the Pistons. The defense was terrible, and the effort was still missing. The big picture remained a mess, and LeBron stayed their worst defender by a significant margin. He is even near the bottom of the league in defensive win shares. That is a wild stat to even mention for a legendary player of his stature. It used to feel disrespectful to even bring up statistics like that when talking about a legend like LeBron. Now, it's unavoidable. Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles and was a 9-time all-defensive team member. Jordan won 6 championships and 6 NBA Finals MVP awards.
He never once allowed a game to get to a championship series to get to a game 7. Never once.
Not one single time.
That
all happened during his 13 years in Chicago. We aren't counting those 2 seasons with the Wizards.
They needed him to come out of retirement
an owner back
to
then,
have an
and they
ownership
needed him
stake.
to play to secure.
That's what they needed.
With this, for a Lakers fan, this is exhausting because the team already has so many other problems to solve. They aren't built like a dominant championship contender. This roster just isn't deep enough to hide bad defense with high-scoring nights. They need the leaders to set the tone. They need their stars to fully buy in. They need LeBron and Luka locked in on both ends so the rest of the team can follow that lead. Without that, the Lakers stay vulnerable to the exact kind of collapses being described right now. Getting embarrassed and blown out by teams they should be handling with ease, it's a bad look. That's when the roster excuse comes out. Supporters always say the same thing, that the team just isn't good enough. Claims that LeBron has no help, the roster is flawed, and there aren't enough defenders to win. Critics say there aren't enough reliable pieces around him. And honestly, some of that is actually true. The Lakers aren't a perfect team. There are holes in the lineup. But does that justify a total lack of effort? The answer is no. And that is why this whole situation is backfiring. A weak roster explains why they aren't title favorites or the deepest team in the Western Conference. It might explain the defensive struggles, but it doesn't explain why LeBron looks so disengaged every single night. It doesn't explain why he stands around after a turnover to argue instead of running back to help. It doesn't explain why he watches offensive rebounds happen without making any effort to actually go get them. Why does a player with his genius IQ and physical gifts look so content to be passive when his team desperately needs him active? That is exactly where the defense of his play starts to wear thin. The point is clear. If LeBron truly can't handle the defensive load anymore, then something has to change. The logical move would be a smaller role. Come off the bench, play fewer minutes, and act like a normal 40-year-old. That's a reasonable path. If the body can't handle the grind, then the coaching staff must make adjustments. But that argument fails because LeBron himself has always fought against those kinds of restrictions and limits. The source mentions that the Lakers tried to put him on a minutes restriction, but he refused. He vetoed it. He claimed he still had more in the tank than most players. That changes everything. Once you insist that you can carry heavy minutes, you're also accepting the criticism that comes with them. You can't claim you're in your prime for the praise, then say you're too old for the accountability. It is that you can't have it both ways. Problem the source keeps hammering home. And that is why some media voices are finally starting to turn. Not all of them. LeBron still has plenty of defenders and a massive support base. He has an entire ecosystem built around his greatness, but the tone is shifting as patterns repeat. The Lakers' defense looks weak. LeBron gets criticized. Then the same old familiar excuses come out. Then he pulls off an athletic masterpiece, and we're reminded he's special. The criticism vanishes for a while, but it returns every time they lose. That cycle is honestly getting old for a lot of people. The source also suggests LeBron isn't the main character anymore. That's a hard pill for fans who saw the NBA revolve around him. But in Los Angeles now, Luka Doncic is the guy the team is centered around. The source says it plainly. Luka is the leader. He's driving. LeBron might be a top roster player and elite for his age, but he is not the center of the universe here anymore. Every person in the bubble is under a unique circumstance. Most pros simply aren't used to playing their careers without any fans in the building. So, Skip, nobody wants to hear why you guys haven't played well, why the shots aren't falling, or why you don't look like the Lakers team that earned the #1 seed in the West. All they want to hear is how you'll fix it. That matters because the Lakers' needs have changed. They don't need him dominating every single possession. They don't need him handling the ball like the only star. They don't need him focusing on individual stats. What they need is for him to help the team win. If that means sacrificing stats and dropping the old ego-driven habits, that's just the price of being a teammate now. That is the point the source keeps making. The Lakers are a team, not a LeBron highlight factor. They aren't there for his glory. They're there to win ball games. If the roster is broken, the answer isn't for LeBron to coast on defense while demanding all the praise. Either he's helping in a way that matters or he isn't. Brutal, but it's a fair standard. The source goes further. If LeBron can't handle the basic responsibilities anymore, maybe the honest answer is retirement. That sounds harsh, but it is part of a much larger point. If a player is too old to defend and do the basics, why is he logging massive minutes and shaping the roster? The source is saying that at some point, the available options simply narrow down. Either he reduces the role, embraces the limits, or he calls it a career. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more NBA stories and deep dive basketball content. And drop your thoughts below because this debate over LeBron's defense is only getting louder.